Hello, I'm Stephen Kelly, founder of KNO Worldwide and a newly elected member of the board of the International Society of Performance Improvement in the International Director position.
Hello, my name is Kelly Novak, also a partner with KNO Worldwide. We'd like to talk a little bit today about HPT, or performance improvement, and how we got into it and what it can do. I got into performance improvement in a little bit unusual way. Very early on, I started becoming a teacher of swimming and of water safety, or lifeguarding. And I had to, I realized, break apart the swimming stroke into 4 pieces: arms, legs, breathing, and the context of the water, and then synthesize them. So I realized I was working with multiple pieces in one system.
It's interesting too, because not in swimming, but I got involved with using performance improvement when I was in the U.S. Army in the 1970s. I was working in developing training, defensive training for people to protect against electronic warfare and these sorts of things. And so we had to come up with systematic approaches to try to teach people the exact things they needed to do in hard conditions to achieve the intended result.
Another one of my early influences on a very different level was in the Peace Corps, where I was working in a country called Micronesia, and they were working towards independence from a trust territory status. So I was working in an entirely different context, an entirely different system. We were trying to improve systems so that they would be able to take over their administration and governance.
Yeah, I guess in the early 70s, we were looking at programmed instruction as approaches to some of the training we were doing, and so I discovered, I guess, NSPI back then, and I think attended early conferences and read the Gilbert book and also some other materials. But basically, we were working within the military context. At that time, they had something called organization effectiveness, which was a unit that was really practicing early PI approaches.
I think that the military is one of the exceptional organizations that have used this. I was lucky enough to study through my master's and doctoral program with Drs. Brinkerhoff and Brethauer, and have a strong theoretical basis in the works of both out of the behavioral psychology and out of the engineering or systems dynamics perspective.
Yeah, so now we've both been working in the field for, 30 plus years. Lots of interesting types of projects. We relocated KNO to Prague in Czechoslovakia in 1991, just after the fall of communism, and found a very ripe field for applying these kinds of methods here.
So not only have we been working with what is often called the transition at a government, business, NGO, social levels, but also working with specific organizations on their performance improvement.
Yeah, a great example is when soon after we came over in 91, early 92, General Motors came in and was opening up their dealer network for their brand Opel, German make. And so they were coming in fresh. The situation was in all of Central Europe on the former communist side. If you wanted to buy a car, you went someplace, a cafe or somebody's office, you opened a binder, you looked at pictures of cars, you finally selected one, you paid all your money cash up front, and in 8 months or a year, if you're lucky, you got a car. What color, what features, who knows? And so, and this was the common sales approach to selling cars. In fact, in the Czech language, there wasn't even a word for sales at the time.
Or sales or marketing at the time.
Yeah, the word prodé, sales, meant a counter clerk. So it was a complete start from the ground up, setting up processes, working within a cultural variant of what would work or not, and then building from this. But we had good success. I mean, within 5 years, General Motors in Czechoslovakia had reached the #1 position in sales of foreign import cars in the country.
So we've been able to work with sort of the general, starting fresh, putting in new systems. We've also done a lot of troubleshooting. For instance, I've worked with one organization a health system in an Eastern European country where they were privatizing and transitioning their healthcare delivery system. They were using a model that was brought in from the West and had been used in much smaller countries, but this country had an unusual situation where about half the population lived in rural and very scattered villages, and then about half the population lived in the larger cities. Specialists were not available in the rural areas, they were totally concentrated in the cities. And so the model that was being put in, which included a change of work processes, a change of structures, a change of financing, a change of the paper flow, approval systems, was not working in each kind of residential area the same way. So they knew that they needed a multi-pronged approach. So I was brought in to create a space so that we could re-look at this and create a more complex but more effective healthcare delivery system. And that, I think, had proved to be the step forward to making this a better situation.
Yeah, a lot of what we get into is defining what is HPT, what is this business we're in of performance improvement. In the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID community, they call it HICD, Human Institutional Capacity Development. Another label, similar sorts of things. And so it's a question of, what is this?
Right, I think that the labels are recent. I chuckle because I think that the people's brains and people working together in organizations is quite old, several tens of thousands of years old, and I think that the empires we have had over the course of history prove that people understood how to work together in organizational structures. However, starting with World War II and on, we have increasingly created a coherent and integral body of theoretical framework that brings out the rules or the premises on how organizations work, and therefore the structures and systems that have to be in place for them to be most effective.
And I think given this whole basis on research, what works, what doesn't work, is what we've been using in Central Europe. I think in the last 20 years we've worked in probably close to 20-some countries in the former Soviet Union, as well as many other countries. I think you're pushing almost close to 100 places now. But always the process is the same. It's systemic, it's systematic, but often we don't use any of these labels because, especially in Europe, there's kind of not an attraction to the buzzwords from America, and so we tend to use the words our clients use, but apply those same process steps.
I think that's very critical because, of course, we have our own jargon in our professional organization. But because we're working in so many different contexts, both culturally, nationally, and also kinds of industries, industry sectors, that it is important that we work with the client system and use what is important to them. What are their critical issues? What are their critical terms? And what is the coherent understanding within the industry that we are dealing with?
Yeah, so as for all of us, it's always a big challenge. Really appreciate the time to spend a couple minutes with you today introducing ourselves. And I look forward to meeting everyone in person over the next few years.
Goodbye.
Thank you.